Live from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello, everyone. John Ray back with you on North Fulton Business Radio. And we are broadcasting, as usual, from inside Renaissance Bank in beautiful Alpharetta. And folks, if you are tired of the big bank, mega bank, soul-crushing experience, and if you're at one of those banks and going through that, you know what I'm talking about. Renaissance Bank offers a magic combination in terms of how they work with their clients. They're big enough to handle pretty much any need you can throw at them, but they're small enough to deliver their services in a personal way. If that's something you're interested in, if that's the kind of banking experience that you'd like in your bank, go to renaissancebank.com, find one of their local offices, and give them a call. I think you'll be glad you did. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now I want to welcome Carole Townsend. Carole's a return guest. I'm delighted to have her back. She's the owner of Right Advice. Carole, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here. Let's talk about you and Right Advice and how you're serving folks out there.
I have been convinced by mentors and advisors that I have over the past couple of years to move my writing workshops from the in-person experience to the online experience. And honestly, I was intimidated by that process. I did not know how to do it, but I've brought people around me who are very good at what they do, and we have launched Right Advice. And I'm so excited to be able to reach so many more aspiring authors this way.
So let's get into your background first before we dive too deep into that, because you've got a tremendous background when it comes to knowing what you're talking about when it comes to writing, publishing successful books, etc., right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I've been very blessed. I'm a 6-time published author, a 20-year newspaper journalist, and I have been teaching writing workshops for about 10 years now in person in the metro Atlanta area.
We've got to shout out some of your books, okay? So I guess there are several, but one is you wrote The History of Peachtree Corners, Georgia.
I did. That was a great project, yes.
Yeah, and you wrote one of the books I was particularly interested in, since I'm a Braves fan, is the kind of the backstory on how the Braves made the move to Cobb County.
Yes, and that was fascinating.
Yeah.
I think when all of that happened, there was a lot of conjecture about backroom deals and how did this happen and how did it happen so quickly. But the Braves organization, key players there were kind enough to sit down with me and explain who, what, why, when, and how of that move. And it's really very interesting. So we get into some of the history of the Braves organization before they were in Atlanta and up to today. Interesting material, but I will also, I have great respect for good photographers. And the photos in the book were all taken by professional sports journalists. So the photos alone are just breathtaking. So cool coffee table book and an interesting read.
And one final shout out, there are more of your books that we can talk about, but one final shout out is you did a book on NASCAR.
I did. How
and
crazy is that?
I love the title, folks. You'll love the title. It's Magnolia's Sweet Tea and Exhaust. That's hilarious.
That was such a cool project and odd for someone like me who knew nothing about NASCAR to choose to do a project like that. But I will say, back in my corporate life as a marketer, I would travel to the Northeast and out West. And when people heard that I was from Georgia, they make assumptions. And without fail, somebody during that trip would ask me who my favorite driver was. And it was years before I understood the question. Somebody pulled me aside and said, Carole, they're talking about NASCAR. And so I just filed that away in my brain. And when our youngest child left for college and we became empty nesters, I saw quickly that I was going to need a project that just completely engulfed me. And my poor husband, I piped up one day and I said, I want to follow the NASCAR circuit for a season. I just want to see what it's about.
Right.
And that experience was amazing. Whether it was drivers, track managers, garage owner, owners of the cars and the teams, everybody was so welcoming to me. And I learned way more than I needed to know about NASCAR. So the book it has humor in spots because I'm a suburban mom learning about NASCAR for the first time, but a lot of good information about the sport and the history and the culture, which is fascinating. Yeah, kind of an odd thing for me to choose to do, but I knew it would keep me busy for a year. And yeah, we just traveled around and camped infield and drove around the track at 165 miles an hour, which I'll never forget. And it was a cool experience.
We were talking before we came on, Carole, about you look at in terms of how you define writers and what they're interested in and how they exercise their craft. There are basically three different kinds of writers. And one of them is what you just described, someone that likes to tell someone else's story, right? Or an interesting story and put connective tissue on a story that maybe folks out there don't really pick up on, right?
Exactly.
So there's that kind of writer. And then what are the other two? There's
someone like you who is an expert in a field or on a topic, and you want to share that expertise with readers. Someone like me, I decided I wanted to be an author. That's what I wanted to do. But some people who choose to write a book don't really care to be an author for the rest of their lives. They just want to write a book about how to or how I learned or let me share, which is just as valid and just as important.
Yeah.
And then there are the writers who have come to me, who have had an event or something take place in their life from which they learned, from which they've recovered, something that was life-changing for them, and they need to tell that story. Also, valid, wonderful reason for writing a book. And I've worked with all these different kinds of authors, and while their goal may be different, our job as writers is to keep the readers turning the page. And to do that, you have to add your voice and your flair and your style and make your book engaging. And so that's where we at Write Advice step in and say, look, I'm not going to tell you, John Ray, what to write in your book because you know more about it than I do. I can certainly help you make it more engaging. I can help you understand the business end. What do I do with it once I've written it? Because writing it, as you know, is maybe half the battle, maybe less, because then you're into the business world of publishing. And we help aspiring authors understand their options, the pros and cons, and just help them through the entire process.
Yeah, I guess my own perspective on this, Carole, I'm interested in what you have to say more than what my perspective is, frankly, is that people spend way too much time until the book is done thinking about all that stuff that happens after the book. And sometimes they let that get in the way of getting the book out. So what is my book cover going to look like? How I'm going to market the book? And it's not that you shouldn't think about that, but until you got words on a page, you don't have much to talk about, right?
You have hit the nail on the head with that one. And I admonish writers all the time, write your book, put the words on the page or screen. I say page. You can't do anything with it. It's not good writing. It's not bad writing. It is no writing until you get it on the page.
Right.
As tempting as it is to think, oh, what's it going to look like? Who's going to publish me? What are readers going to think? You can't worry about any of that. If you do, you are not writing your best book. And it's difficult to refrain from that, but you have to if you want to write your best book.
So I think we've set this up pretty clearly at the beginning of this conversation. You're a successful author yourself. You've got more than just a couple of books out, quite a list of books out that you have released. Why are you doing this as opposed to doing another book yourself?
I love when people ask me that question because There is no other author on this planet like me, and there's no other author like you, and no other author like the person that signs up for Write Advice. To each of us has our own skills and talents and abilities. And I don't ever foresee a day when we get a phone call from libraries saying, enough, we've got enough books. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And your story is different from mine. And even if we told the same story, we're going to tell it in a different way. So it's really not about, gosh, I'm teaching people to compete with me. I'm not. I am sharing my love and beauty and the power in the written word with others. And I have experienced publishing success. I'm going to continue with that. God willing, I will never stop writing books. However, if I can help someone else along the way, because trust me, John, everything I learned in this business, I learned by slamming my head against a brick wall. I didn't have a resource. I wasn't aware of a resource like this. There are other workshops out there now. Certainly, there are a lot of people doing this. But the way I do it is different from the way someone else might. And the way I do it works because I've seen it work. I do it to encourage. It's a scary thing to start out doing something that you've never done before, and you know that your book will be judged and reviewed and talked about and probably slammed and probably exalted. And you've got to develop some chops to be able to take that and to know that once your book is finished, it's the best book that you could write. So if I can help somebody along the way avoid some of the really dumb mistakes I made, I'm happy to do that. Happy to do it.
So do you help aspiring authors, and this is more of an aspiring author question than someone who's actually done it. Do you help aspiring authors with procrastination?
Oh my goodness. The world's biggest problem of a writer. Oh my goodness. Yes.
How many books could have been published without procrastination?
Yes. And I believe, in fact, I know that happens because of the am I good enough question. Do I have what it takes? The idea of writing the book is very different from the reality of writing the book. And so intimidation, maybe a lack of self-confidence in doing this, anything. People will come up with anything.
And is it fear of the reaction that you talked about judgment?
Oh, goodness.
And getting slammed and that kind of thing. Do you think that's part of it too? Fear that people have about about putting something in print that's permanent? It's permanent.
Once those words are on that page, you're not taking them back. You can do it at great expense, but it's also the factor of this is my baby. And every single book I've written, when I turn it loose from my cold hands and give it to my publisher and my input is done.
Yeah.
Other than editing, it's like putting your child on the school bus for the first time. It's just, you hope and pray that people aren't cruel. You hope and pray that it has a measure of success. But more than anything, you hope and pray that what you set out to accomplish is accomplished. And that's an intimidating thing. Oh my gosh. Social media, TV, mopping the floors, walking the dog, everything takes precedence over sitting down, closing that door, and getting down to work. And it's work.
So I'm saying this with my tongue in cheek here, folks, this question. So do you have a module on your site for how to write a book with ChatGPT?
I do not. On principle.
Let me be more serious. So what is the role, in your view, of AI in writing a book?
Clearly, I'm old school. I have been around for a bit. I see a very clear delineation between organic intelligence and artificial. There is not. If somebody is smart enough to figure out how to make something write a book, good for them. Whose name do you put on it? If I use AI to write a book, I wouldn't feel right putting my name on it. It has to be my work and my words. I'm not slamming AI. It's got its place in this world. But when we get into AI creating for us, creating entertainment, creating books, I'm sure music somewhere along the line.
Right.
I don't know. Where do you draw that line? Is it my work or is it the work of a lot of other people coming from an artificial source? I see a big difference in that.
Yeah.
I do have students that say, I wrote myself into a corner and ChatGPT and I cringe a little bit, but it's coming. It's here.
It seems to me that, let's take your book about move to Cobb County for an example. So artificial intelligence can really help when it comes to researching history and pull together a lot of information very quickly that might otherwise have taken you, like when you did that book, I'm sure there's a lot of research you did that took hours and hours that you might be able to hone that down a little bit in terms of the time. But what Chat GPT, or I'm not picking on Chat GPT, but any AI software cannot go do the interviews that you did with the executives that were working behind the scenes and give the behind the scenes picture of what was happening, because all it can do is go out and search what's publicly available.
Exactly. And that's a great example, because these guys did sit down with me and explain things that I hadn't understood before. And another great example of the difference between automated research and research that we do ourselves is the Peachtree Corners book. I was able to sit down with people that were older than 100 years old, that grew up in that area, that told me about working on these big farms, and that told me about making sorghum syrup from the sugar cane that the farmers around them grew. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get the human factor. The Blood in the Soil book about the Larry Flint shooting. I was able to talk to police officers and attorneys and people that were there on the scene. And that stuff is not out there anywhere. It's out there in my book now, but I certainly didn't uncover everything, and artificial intelligence is not going to either. So again, not slamming it. I get we're already there, but there is a big difference.
For sure. Hey folks, we're chatting with Carole Townsend. Carole is a successfully published author of quite a few books. How many books now?
6. Working on number 7, but yeah. 6.
You ready to say what number 7's about?
You know what? Last time we talked, I had hinted that it was going to be set at Lake Lanier. Yeah. I've had something else come onto my radar that is absolutely fascinating. And I'm going to say it's about South Georgia and some of the small town shenanigans that can take place in smaller towns. I'm
shocked to hear there's shenanigans in small towns.
You know it, but then when you hear the specifics, you think, my gosh, wow. So this one, in fact, when I leave here with you today, I'm going to go home and read some FBI and DEA and GBI files.
Oh, wow.
See if I can sink my teeth into this one and run with it.
Something tells me you can't find those on Chat GPT either,
no, probably
not. Okay, cool. We'll look forward to that book and have you back, talk about that.
Yeah.
But Carole is, folks, she's the owner of Write Advice, which is a online resource for aspiring authors. So talk about the kind of workshops that you do on Write Advice. Okay. And obviously, you're filling knowledge gaps and, in some cases, confidence gaps too. Sure. So talk about what some of those look like.
One of the things I tell students when they jump on is I've got 3 workshops out there that I want you to do first for several reasons. It's going to get us over that procrastination hump, because you sit down in front of the computer and you know what you want to say, but you don't know where or how to start. Outlining, which makes me cringe. I hated it all the way through high school and college, but we talk about different ways to do that. What works for you might not work for me. So we talk about different ways to structure and outline your book. We talk about plot. We talk about the foundational things that you need to understand and own before you ever put a word to a page. And if you do these things the way that we teach them, once that structure is put in place, that big skeleton on which you hang your story or your book, then you can focus on unfolding the story, unfolding the topic, and not, oh my gosh, rewrites. I don't know if you ever ran into that. You're writing, goodness gracious, whether it's fiction, historical fiction, if you are writing along and you haven't got a really strong structure for your book and you decide in chapter 6, this character needs to be killed off, we're going to bring somebody else in. If you haven't written that into your outline, you've got a nightmare of rewrites 6 chapters worth of rewrites, and you're probably not going to catch them all. Your editor will, but just to save yourself the headaches of the rewrites and the rethinking things, you lay a good foundation, and then you're off and running. Then we talk about technique and different literary elements and things that really bring your work to life.
Yeah. Wow. Great stuff.
Yeah.
So these workshops are these actual like Zoom, maybe not Zoom, but are they video workshops that subscribers to your site have access to?
Yeah.
Are they live or recorded?
So this is the way they're recorded, but this is the way we've structured what's out there now.
Okay.
Now, as the community grows, we will have live interaction with me, with other students. But right now in these building phases, we have the video, and I call it a lecture. I'm sitting in a leather chair. We're hanging out. We're talking about what we're going to discuss in this workshop and why it matters. And we'll have that conversation, and then we go into narrated slides that explain the nitty-gritty of what we're talking about in that workshop. And then we have an exercise or exercises at the end of each one. And then, of course, there's a printable PDF for you to keep as reference if that's how you keep your records. So all of the workshops that are out there right now are available under one umbrella because they're already completed. They're out there, and they're there for your consumption, along with a reference library that we build weekly, different materials to help you with things like research or character development or any one of 100 elements that go into the writing of a book.
So talk about the other resources that you've got that go beyond the workshops, the recordings, the live sessions themselves. So you're adding other material as well.
Yeah, the reference library that we're building is things. I'll give you an example. So character development is one of my favorite things to teach. It's so much fun. I want students to have access to all the tools that I have found to have value for me. So there is a psychological test that I've put up there that's an actual designed by a psychologist, not myself. But if you go through this test and answer these questions, it helps you develop your antagonists, your protagonists, and your main characters. It gives you different things to think about so that people understand, okay, he's an antagonist, but why? What's his background? It deepens your characters. So it's a cool exercise. It's a great resource for writers to have.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. So let's get to the cost. I know some folks are out there wondering about that. It's a subscription model.
It is.
Right? So monthly?
It's a monthly subscription. There is no commitment past. It's month to month. It's not, you're not signing up for a year.
Got it.
You're not signing away your firstborn. I believe so strongly in these workshops and their effectiveness. We have offered actually through the end of June it's laughable to say it's $29 a month, unlimited access, and you can do these workshops one time or 20 times, whatever it takes for it to sink in. If you are an overachiever and you blow through all of them in 1 month, they cost you $29. If you want to hang out with us and as you develop through the process, it's $29 a month. Now, as we add the community part of this, if you want one-on-one coaching time with me, those are different structures that will be added. But right now, access to everything for $29 a month. It helps me because my students give me feedback. This works better for me. This is easier to understand. But yeah, through the end of June, it's $29 a month. Okay,
so as we're recording this show here in May 2024, the price is $29 through the end of June 2024. If you're listening to this show in 2025, the pricing may be different, right? As you build it out.
It will be. You'll certainly have the value. But yeah, for the content that's up there, for all of the materials we have there, it's the developers are telling me it's a beta subscriber price of $29 a month. And once you sign up for that price, that is your cost.
Yeah.
Now on July 1st, there will be a pricing structure there. But yeah.
Oh, so you're grandfathered in if you get in before.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Because these people are helping me as well as I'm helping them. So
that's outstanding.
Yeah.
So I guess the substitute here for aspiring writers is going to a conference, going to workshops, going to, I don't know, the local writers group or whatever. Why shouldn't someone do that as opposed to work with Write Advice?
Yeah, that's a good question and a fair question. Clearly, when we commit to a date, place, time, people are eliminated because they have conflicts, obviously. When you participate online, you do it in your home, at your pace. You can do it at 2 a.m., you can do it at noon, you can do it at 6 a.m. If you've ever been to a writers conference, that kind of answers itself. The last one I considered was a $7,000 conference in Hawaii. I don't need to go to Hawaii to learn how to write. And I didn't have the $7,000 to set aside for me to go to Hawaii to take a conference. And in all honesty, this is a weird business, and we authors are weird people. So I've been to other such educational events in which the author will share up to a point and then they'll back off. Only because, in my opinion, they worked very hard to learn the things that they learned. You don't walk up to an author and say, hey, who's your agent and what's his phone number? Big no, because they worked hard to get that information, to earn it, really, and it is earned. So it's a weird and quirky business. You get some information, but not a lot. So they're expensive. There's the time commitment. You can either be there or you can't. Other workshops, I'm certainly not putting down other workshops. I'm sure they're wonderful. Just these are mine. I know that they work. They're very well received. I've been doing it for a long time, just expanding the audience now.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get to next. Thank you for setting me up there, Carole. You're really bringing what you've been doing for 10 years now, right? Yeah. For 10 years online, essentially. So talk about what you have been doing so that listeners can hear about that. The in-person workshops and sessions for writers that you've been doing.
Okay. So the way I have structured it in the past with the in-person workshops is, say, a 6-week workshop or an 8-week workshop. We meet in person. I think they're probably 3-hour sessions. So we meet once a week. So you're talking about 24 hours of one-on-one instruction. That package is typically $1,800. You are getting specific workshops. Say one I teach is character and setting development. That's it. One is the structuring of your book. One is the business end of your book. How are you going to be published? How are you going to publicize your book? Because as well as I do, it's up to you, unless you're Stephen King or James Patterson, you're going to be out there pounding the pavement, publicizing your book. We teach all of this. So the plus, clearly, of Write Advice and having these all consolidated under one roof, so to speak, in one place, is that I produced this stuff once. I've put hundreds of hours into reformatting my workshops for this type of presentation. And I'm very proud of them. I love the way that we've set them up. They're casual, they're engaging, very educational and informative, but they're relaxing. You can't write if you're not relaxed. You can't be stressed out about it. That's the advantage of the online stuff. Is you set up your own space, you do it at your own pace, and I find it very effective.
Yeah. I think it would be great at this point, given the fact that Write Advice is relatively new, is if you could share a success story from those workshops that you've had. You've mentored some authors that ended up being pretty successful with what they did.
Yeah, and I'm proud to say that. I would certainly not take credit for their work, but I've got several students who have told me that they had never considered, or they had started a book, started a project, and either ran out of fuel or lost confidence. And after taking one of my workshops, it kickstarted them again. And I can think of 4 students right now who have gone on to publish their own books. I can think of a couple who have co-authored books. And I can think of many who are in the process now of writing their book, telling their story. And other students have taken what they've learned in my workshops to the corporate workplace and become very effective communicators, and it's helped in their career that way. I've had a couple that have gone on to become journalists because that's such an interesting part of this road that I've taken.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me very proud to know that I could help someone along that journey, maybe give them that last shove they needed to really gain traction and keep it going themselves.
Well, Carole, this has been great, and I can't imagine there aren't some folks that want to hear more about this, about Right Advice and how you might be able to serve them. So let's give them directions on how they can find you and contact information, and of course the website itself.
Good. Thank you. The best way to contact me and we can have a back and forth email conversation about this if anyone would like, is through my author website, which is CaroleTownsend.com. Carole is with an E. Right Advice is rightadvice.net. If you want to take a look at that, I think there's a way to browse the workshops that are up there now. And then if somebody just wants to reach out to my email, which is info@caroletownsend.com, happy to share more information about it.
And that's, folks, it's probably self-evident, but just in case, it's Right, WRITE advice.net. That's where you can find this resource.
The workshops and the materials.
Terrific. Carole, this has been great. Thank you so much for your coming in. Thank you for what you're doing. We're delighted we could highlight it today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carole. Carole Townsend, the owner of Right Advice. Folks, just a couple of things before we let you go for today. If you are in the North Fulton area and beyond, and I'll tell you more about the beyond part in a second, you need to check out Casa Nova Italian Restaurant. They're a cook-to-order kitchen serving a traditional Italian fare, including pasta, of course, but chicken, seafood, veal, vegetarian, and even gluten-free options, and daily specials. They were farm to table before that was cool. They're 26 years old, and they've had a garden behind their restaurant for years and years, and it's fresh, delicious food. I happen to know they have customers that drive from as far away as south of Atlanta to come to their Alpharetta location to eat. That's how good they are. So if you want more information, go to CasaNovaRestaurant.com. Also, you can check them out for their catering. They do terrific catering work if you have a need in that regard. Carole mentioned my book, and yes, my book is out. It's called The Generosity Mindset, A Journey to Business Success by Raising Your Confidence, Value, and Prices. If you're a solo or small professional services firm and you're having issues around your positioning, your business development, your pricing, your confidence in the value that you offer, this book may be for you. Go to thegenerositymindset.com to learn more and find out where to buy the book, which is essentially everywhere. Also, I just want to thank you, our listeners. You are fabulous. You supported us over what is now 8 years. We just celebrated our 8-year anniversary, and we're almost at show number 800 for North Fulton Business Radio, and we've only gotten this far because of you. Thank you for your support as we continue to live into our mission to be the voice of business in the North Fulton region. So for my guest, Carole Townsend, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.